Welcome to Ink and Flame. I'm your host, Tina Kutras, and I'm sitting down tonight with Danielle Harrington to talk about the Hollis Timewire Series. Hi, Danielle. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. So we're going to get right into it and talk about your books because you have quite a few. And these are a different one from what we talk about. Like we kind of linger in the romantasy, fantasy genre, and yours are completely different for us.
Yeah, this is a completed young adult dystopian series that has 4 books.
That's fantastic. So, can you share a little bit about your background and how you transitioned from being a chemistry teacher to a full-time writer?
Yeah, so I got my undergraduate degree in chemistry from Biola University, and then I immediately started teaching high school chemistry straight out of university. And I taught high school chemistry for about 5 years. And then when I got pregnant with my daughter, a lot of things happened around that time. I taught through COVID, which was it was a lot, teaching a lab-based science class and having to do that online for essentially a little over a year.
Yikes.
But when I got pregnant with my daughter, my husband and I were talking about potentially moving out of state because we lived in California, and kind of things just lined up. And when I had my daughter, I stepped away from my teaching career, and I had already published the first 2 books in my series while I was teaching high school. So that was The Diseased Ones and The Unseen Ones. So when I left teaching, I kind of already had a little bit of that author career and know-how in terms of like how to publish a book to fall back on and kind of do more aggressively, like in between taking care of my daughter. Being a stay-at-home mom is definitely a lot of work, but it's also really flexible in terms of scheduling my own time to write and edit and publish.
Nice. That is awesome, I imagine. I mean, it's a lot of work for sure, being a stay-at-home
Definitely.
mom, but very rewarding too. And to compound that with being an author, a successful author is pretty awesome.
It's been really fun. I've enjoyed moving to being more full time with writing. And also, I'm an editor. So I'm a developmental editor, and I've done that for about 2 years. So I edit client books and write my own. And it's a little extra money on the side to like help fund my own projects. And so that's
Yeah,
been great.
that's awesome. So your Goodreads bio mentions that your love for all things science and fantasy. How do these two passions kind of influence you as a writer?
So I have always enjoyed science since I was very young. And when I did chemistry in high school, I had a really good teacher with, which I think makes all the difference in the world. And then 2, I was like, oh, I actually really like this. So um, I used a little bit of my science background in the Hollis Timewire series. It is very futuristic. Like the basic premise of The Diseased Ones is it's about a futuristic society that tests people's blood to find and eliminate people with superpowers. So, kind of X-Men inspired in a way. I really also loved The Giver and Divergent and the
Mhm.
Ugly series by Scott Westerfeld. So, kind of that 2010s dystopian genre boom. And there were pieces of the science. I mean, like, it is science fiction, but there were pieces of the science where I was like, oh, well, like, we'll just drag a little bit of reality in here just to spruce it up. And it was fun kind of drawing a little bit on like my biology knowledge for just like little details, nothing major, but just like little lines of dialogues or little details here and there. I'd be like, oh, well, this is fun because I know science.
That's pretty awesome. So, what initially inspired you to start writing this series?
This particular series, I started writing The Diseased Ones after I had binged the TV show Heroes, which has like, a bunch of superpowers, right? I binged all of those seasons in like a couple weeks. It was really quick. And I was like, look at all the cool, shiny powers. And I had a general concept of like a girl with a very powerful ability who makes the wrong choice and is forced to confront what she was raised to believe about society versus what the actual reality of it is. And I initially wrote the first draft of The Diseased Ones in like 4 weeks. I pumped out about like 50,000 ish words. And it's a rather short book. In its published version, it's 68,000 words. So I did develop it through many drafts from its first conception to publication. But I originally wrote it. I had no idea what I was doing, by the way. I just word vomited the book. I had not been to a writing conference at that point. I had not taken any writing workshops. I did not know how to publish. I didn't even know that there were different types of edits that a manuscript got. I was very new to wanting to pursue hey, I think I want to get this story published, even though I had been writing since I was very little. But The Diseased Ones was the first manuscript that I had finished in its entirety. I had started a lot of manuscripts, and just something about finishing this one so quickly and being so excited about it. I was like, I need to learn a lot of things because I want to publish this and I have no idea how to do that.
That sounds like quite the journey.
Definitely.
So when did you realize it was something you wanted to pursue seriously? So you mentioned that when you moved, you took it on full time. Would that be when this happened?
Well, I think just pursuing publishing seriously, it happened before that because I had published the first 2 books before I had moved to Idaho and transitioned to being a full-time writer, editor, stay-at-home mom. So I'd started quite a few manuscripts being younger. I'd written a pretty decent novel length in middle school, and then I started a different pretty decent novel length in high school. Wow. And then again in college, I had started something that was before The Diseased Ones. But when I had written The Diseased Ones, it was the first manuscript I had fully finished. And I was like, okay, I actually want to figure out how to get published, whatever that ends up looking like in the end. Because I knew there was oh, you have your big publishing houses. I knew that at the very least, but I didn't know how to query, or if you want to go to the traditional route, you have to get an agent, and you have to, then if you sign with an agent, then they pitch you to publishers, or the independent route where you end up learning to do it all yourself or hiring people to do certain steps for you. So when I had finished The Diseased Ones, I was like, okay, I actually want to publish a story. I need to learn a lot to do that. I recognized I knew nothing. And so when I went to my first writing conference, it was the Southern California Writers Conference, and I learned so much that weekend. I felt like I had attended just a mini crash course on so many aspects of storytelling and publishing and how to pitch your story and some of the differences between traditional publishing and indie publishing. And so I went to several writing conferences and learned a bunch and rewrote The Diseased Ones probably 4 full times before I had started querying that for traditional publishing, to in the end decide that I was going to pursue something different to publish The Diseased Ones, because it was a story I was really excited about and believed in. So I kind of was like, okay, I think maybe I want to make a career out of this, when I had decided, come hell or high water, I will publish The Diseased Ones in some capacity at some point. And that had come out February 2020, right before the pandemic hit. I was actually supposed to have a book signing at my school that got canceled because of the pandemic, which made me sad, but alas,
No
it's
doubt.
fine.
That's wild. And what a journey that is. I was not expecting that.
It was from me deciding okay, how do I do this, to publishing it was a couple of years, because there was a lot I had to learn. And I learned so much even through writing the first 2 books of the series. And I felt way more capable writing book 3 and 4. 4 is the finale. So kind of finishing the whole series, I was like, oh, I kind of know what I'm doing now. I know the steps I should take from draft to I'm going to hit self-publish on this book better when I got to that point. But that was several years of doing that before I felt pretty comfortable with the self-publishing process.
Oh, okay. So how has becoming a stay-at-home mom and finding balance in your daily life shaped your writing routine and creative process?
Aggressively take advantage of my daughter's nap time, which she's napping right now, which is why I was like, we should do this right now. This is great. But yeah, I will work at night when she goes to bed, or will work during her naps. Sometimes, if she's up, sometimes and she's occupied with self-play, or she's watching some Bluey. Sometimes if I'm feeling in the mood or creative, and I'm like, oh, I have to get words out. So it depends. I have seasons where I'm way more productive than other seasons, but I just try to keep pushing and making progress in some area
Hmm.
whether that be drafting or editing or thinking work. I'm a big fan of thinking work. If you're going to make a robust, complex story with compelling characters and high stakes, like there's a lot of thinking that goes into it. Whether you're like a super hard, I plot everything, or I kind of just let things happen, I still think that thinking work is important in the process. One of the reasons I can sometimes write so fast through a section or even through a whole manuscript sometimes is because I've done a lot of living in my head and living through the moments of the plot and the characters and like the emotions I want to elicit out of it. And then when I sit down to write, I'm like, oh, but I've thought about this already. Like, I know exactly what's supposed to happen here.
It's already right there for you.
Yeah. And that doesn't always happen like that, but I do find that the more thinking work I do about a certain section, that when I get to that in my draft, I'm like, oh, this feels like pretty solid first draft material because I've done a lot of that pre-work in my head.
Yeah. And do you find it plays out like scenes in your mind or
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
thoughts? Yeah. Okay.
So slight background, I've done like acting and stage stuff since I was really little, like through high school and the beginning of college. So a lot of like the scenes or character moments I've acted out a lot of different things behind the scenes, just like with myself in the mirror or with myself in the shower or driving in the car. And I love the acting aspect of it that ends up on the page with characters and that people can imagine, a lot of things once you read it, because I think everyone's reading experience of the same material is different. But it's
Absolutely.
it's fun. I love acting. It's great.
And I think to some degree it would provide a little bit more depth. If you're already playing the scene out in your mind, I think as a
Mhm.
scene, it would definitely kind of flow nicely, I think.
Mhm.
It's very cool. So was there a particular moment or idea that gave birth to the diseased ones?
I really loved The Giver growing up. I read that book, The Giver by Lois Lowry, like dozens of times at different points. And I think that was my very first introduction to the dystopian genre, just as a whole. But then The Hunger Games was the first book I ever read in one sitting, like binged it in a day, kind of one sitting. I was like, I didn't know reading could do this to a person. And I was like, I want to write a story where people can't put it down and can binge it in a day, or like they just are thinking about, if they have to put the book down for some reason, that they're thinking about it and wanting to get back to it. It's like, I want to write a story that feels that compelling. And I think the general consensus for most of my readers is that I have accomplished that with this series, which makes me very happy. And now, obviously, I know, my series is not for everybody. Not everyone's going to love it, but the people, the fans that it has found its way to, that it's been for, have told me, they're like, I can't put your books down. Like, they're so good. They're so compelling. And I'm like, yay, my happy
I
little
love to hear that.
storyteller heart.
My daughter was like that. She read the same book that you just referenced and she absolutely loved it.
Hmm.
And you mentioned the Hunger Games, and I remember working a shift. It was not a true working shift. It was a supervisory, like there was construction in our building and they needed people to volunteer to stay during that period. So I had the Hunger Games with me because my son had read it and wanted me to read it. And that was what happened to me. I literally spent the whole weekend with my feet up on my desk,
Mhm.
watching the guys doing work and reading that book, devoured it in the two first books in one weekend. So I get
Oh,
that.
that's awesome. Yep.
So dystopian novels often reflect societal fears and questions. Are there specific themes or issues that you were exploring throughout this series?
Okay. So, one of the big tensions and conflicts through the whole Hollis Timewire series is between two groups of people. You have your people with powers that society has labeled the diseased ones, and you got your society and the government as an institution whose aim is to eradicate the diseased ones, like wipe them off of the face of the earth. So one of the things that I explored particularly heavily in the first book, which has really, it's been so interesting to see the response of my readership toward Hollis in the first book, because Hollis is an incredibly brainwashed character. She's a child. She turns 16. She takes her blood test. She fails, and then she finds out that she's a diseased one. This, like, and what her mind is, like, these are this is bad. Like the diseased ones, they went crazy. They had a brain mutation. It's a good thing that the government is eradicating this genetic marker from the gene pool. The government's here to protect us. So her finding out that she is a diseased one and she's thrust into an entire underground world of diseased ones who have a very different story to tell her about just society and history. I loved exploring how brainwashed her inner monologue is and just what she tells herself and what she believes versus what she's experiencing. And then growing her up through the 4 books, like she changes so much through the series. And it's really exploring good versus evil in a very broad sense, but like what makes somebody human? What are the things that we should value about someone? She hated the diseased ones, and she like has been like taught so many things about them, and then experiences like what actual family is like, what love is like, and all these things that she never really experienced growing up. Because another theme is like society is very emotionally repressed. Like you're not supposed to feel your emotions or show your emotions. Like physical touch is very limited, like kept only in the family unit. And just her breaking through all of the societal boundaries that she grew up and considered good and noble and like this is how it's supposed to be versus what she finds out is like true and not true throughout the series, all while dealing with a very complex and powerful superpower ability through the books. So yeah, those were like themes that I touched on throughout the 4 books and just her personal growth as a person, but then thrust as we continue the series, thrust into like bigger and bigger roles because she has such a powerful ability. She becomes this important leader that she never really wanted, but it's thrust upon her because of the kind of power that she has.
Right.
So I think the Hollis Timewire series is a little bit different from other dystopian books because Hollis does not start as the champion of let's fight the government. They're bad and evil and we have to revolt and good has to win. And I'm the leader because I'm the main character. No, she's very much on the government side for a long time to the dismay of many of my readers. But that's the point. She is so brainwashed into believing what she believes that she doesn't want to let go of it.
Wow. So that's incredible. I love that concept. The reluctant hero kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did your scientific background in chemistry play a role in crafting some of your world building or technology? You've mentioned that you kind of involved it a little bit, but did it actually play a part in the world building aspect or the technology in your storylines?
There's one little detail that I remember because people get their powers when they turn 16, which I know, very classic dystopian. The 16-year-old, gets thrust into their new world at 16, which happens everywhere. But I was like, okay, but can I ground that in some sort of biological reality? Like, why does the government test their blood at 16? And then if their blood's good to go, yeah, you can become a citizen and now you can get a job and like you have clean blood.
Yeah.
I was like, well, why 16? So I was talking to one of my fellow teacher friends, and there's certain genes in our body that turn on and off at certain biological points in our life. Like, for example, if I were to become pregnant, certain parts of my body would turn on, like for milk production for my baby or for, this, that, and the other thing. Like, it's that the biological time to do the thing it's supposed to do. And I was like, okay, so what if there was like a gene, like this genetic marker that like turns on around 16, basically, that to activate people's powers. And that's why we have to test when we're at 16 before, you're allowed to become a fully fledged society member and stuff. And there were some like exceptions in my series to that like genetic marker turning on. And I kind of explained that as, oh, well, like people can get their powers like younger than 16, but it's really rare because that's not when the gene turns on. Like that's not when the power expresses itself, so to speak.
Right.
So I kind of had a little bit of fun with that, like just little details of let's just ground this in a little bit of biological reality, but like it's science fiction.
You get a little bit of freedom for sure. Readers have praised twists that they didn't see coming. Can you shed a little light on your approach to crafting unexpected plot turns, of course, without any spoilers?
Yes. So I am a big advocate for in a story structure, what you are setting up is a promise to the reader with what kind of story that you're going to tell. And so, to a certain degree, a reader should be reading the story with an expectation of X, Y, and Z happening. And I think that the best twists come out of subverting your reader's expectation. And, you still have to deliver on the promise of the book, though. Like, so here, I should have been just showing my book this whole time, but here's the deceased ones. The promise that I set up for the reader in this story arc is that we see Hollis questioning her worldview. And so there has to be some kind of resolution to her being exposed to, the things she's been taught to believe versus what is now being presented as the truth. So subverting the twist in this book comes from me subverting what we think is going to happen with Hollis's conclusions about her own world and her being a diseased one, the world of the diseased ones that she's been thrust into, like these people in hiding. The best twists come out of an expectation versus the reality of what happens in the book. And some things you should fulfill certain promises to the reader. Like, we know that X is supposed to happen in the storyline because they've been talking about it or we've set it up. That should be a part of the story plot, but the twists are where we're like, whoa, I thought it was going to be this, but it's actually this? What the heck? That's where the good twists come from.
Nice. That sounds good. You've completed multiple books in the Hollis Timewire series. How did your vision for the series evolve from the first book to the last installment?
Okay, so I actually had originally intended the diseased ones to be a standalone, and my sister was so upset at the ending that she was like, no, I refuse for that to be the ending. I was like, no, but that's the ending, that's how it ends. And she just bugged me for months to write another book. And I was like, I'm not going to write another book unless I have another big central conflict to revolve a story arc around, because I'm not going to just do it for the sake of writing it because you were upset at the diseased one's ending. That's not how this works. But the longer I thought about it, and I finally came up with a big conflict to revolve book 2 around, I was like, oh, maybe this is more than one book. Oh, no.
I have to tell her she was right.
I know. So it expanded from this just being a standalone to 3 books. It was 3 books for a while. And then the world got too big, got too complex politically, that as I go, no, it has to be 4 books. So I have, here's book 2, The Unseen Ones. And then book 3, The Pure Ones, was going to be the finale. And then it's just, there was way too much that had to happen. So my finale is The Empowered Ones here.
Okay, so now you have to hold all of those up, because I definitely noticed a little thickness changing as we went.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so we got this one. Okay, so we've got 68,000 words, 76, 101, 142,000 words.
Beautiful.
So, yeah, they're thick. The finale is really thick, but this is the thickest book I've written so far. And I've written and published 5 books.
It's gorgeous. It looks amazing. And the covers are wonderful. I love them. Can you walk us through your writing routine? Do you outline extensively, or are you more of a discovery writer? And how has it changed throughout the process?
So with the diseased ones, I had the basic concept of what I was trying to tell with the story, but a lot of the story just came as I wrote it, and I binged it over 4 weeks. I wrote a very messy first draft and kind of got out the general very skeletal bones. But that one was very much, let's just see what happens. Let's just do things to do them, because that's fun. So there was less planning and less reasoning behind the original draft of the diseased ones, which changed a lot. I rewrote the diseased ones probably 4 full rewrites, and then went in kind of more fine-tuned edits after that. But when I approached the second book, because my sister was like, you can't just write you can't do this as a standalone. You cannot end it like that. So that when I approached the second book and I finally had a big conflict to revolve the second book around, I started planning more. And I would still have pieces of improv that came in as I was going, but at least I had bigger plot points in the second one where I'm like, oh, I should work towards this next big plot point. How am I going to do that? And then with the Pure Ones, book 3, I had a lot of life happen between book 2 and book 3. I had a baby, I moved states, I quit my teaching job, I became a stay-at-home mom. Like, there was the whole pandemic between book 2 and 3. My goodness, there was a lot. So I had taken a big break from the project, and I hadn't touched it for a long time. There's a stark shift between book 2 and 3 where the world gets so much bigger than you thought it was. And there's a whole new cast of characters that get brought in book 3 that were not a part of the beginning of the series. And there was a lot more forethought that had to go into it. And then, particularly with my finale, and I'm very proud of this, while I was writing the Pure Ones, which is book 3, some of my villain character was doing a lot behind the scenes that we were totally unaware of in book 3, like completely oblivious to. But I had to pace out what his plot beats in the background while I was writing book 3, because in book 4, there's a section of book 4 where we get to see everything he did in book 3, the entire time everything was happening. And even through the twists of book 3, he is just aware of a lot. And so going into planning some of the more complex finale moments, I recognized a big, giant piece of book 4's plot had to do with the behind the scenes of book 3. And I was like, well, all right, this is going to be a big thing, but I can do it. And it took a couple years of work and planning and forethought through writing book 3 and through crafting book 4 to get it correct. But the reveals are so good because I planned it so down to every detail. Yes, anyway, I'm very proud of it.
I love that. I love seeing the enthusiasm and excitement you have about this series. It's just
a really good series. I'm the author, guys, and I'm biased, but like really, it's pretty good.
So what would you say are some of the challenges that you face when you're writing, and how do you overcome them?
I mean, there's a lot of times where I just don't want to write, and it's become easier to push through those because when you make writing more of a habit, it feels easier. I think the hardest part for me is just sitting down and starting. But once I'm there at the keyboard, like I feel like I pretty much always have good writing sessions now and can get out something. A lot of what I've done, especially in the past year, are a lot of writing sprints where it's like you set a timer for 20 minutes and you go. You just type. You don't worry about how pretty it sounds or fixing things. You just go and you get out words and you move forward in your scene. And whether you get 50 words in that 20 minutes or 700 words in that 20 minutes, like there are better sprints than others, but just the discipline of sitting down and carving out, even if it's literally 15 or 20 minutes for your whole day, you made progress because you can't edit something that's not there.
Very true.
I always say progress is progress. Like whether you had like a 2,000 word writing day that was like the greatest thing ever, or you just eked out like the most painful couple sentences and you're like, I'm a trash writer, this is awful. Like you got some stuff out, you know? And so that's been a big thing I've just really tried to upkeep, is making it more of a habit and just pushing through moments where I feel more stuck. Because there are days where it's awesome and I'll get several thousand words in a day and I'm like, wow, I got through this chapter. It felt so good. Like, and then there are other days where I'm like, this is literally terrible. I don't know how to English today.
I don't know how to English.
Honestly.
Do you have any rituals or habits that help you get into the right headspace to write? Do you grab a tea or put on your music or any of that stuff?
I feel like for me personally, I have to change up my atmosphere, basically where I sit down and write, because sometimes I can, like I have a writing office, this is our like bonus room in our house, and I have like a desk, and sometimes I'm good to go and I feel productive at this desk. Other times I'm like, I don't, and I would rather just sit in our living room. Or I just do not feel productive in my house. I need to go to a coffee shop or I need to sit outside. Like in the summer, we have a back patio area in our backyard. I love sitting out there and just being in the fresh air and the sunshine and having, I think, a different space. I'm like a cat. I'll like camp out somewhere for a couple weeks and then I'll be like, this is no longer productive. I don't like it here anymore. Then I'll move somewhere else and camp out there for a couple weeks.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, so that, I mean, that's, for me personally, my environment definitely lends to a more productive and less productive space depending on where I am.
Nice. And you also said that different seasons affect you. When is your most productive? Is it summer?
Well, recently I've been very productive because I wrote the finale of my series, and then I wrote a first book of a whole new series all within a year and published both. So I've been a little crazy recently.
I love that.
But yeah, I really like spring and summer because I like being outside. And here's another thing I've noticed about myself is sometimes, well, it's often easier for me to write a scene at the time of day that the scene is happening. It's the time of day, like in reality, because if I'm writing a scene and it's the middle of the night in the forest and I'm trying to write that at, 10 a.m., I'm like, but it's light outside. It's not light outside in the book. So sometimes that time of day will affect how productive I feel.
So dystopian fiction often explores the what-if scenarios about the future. What drew you to the dystopian genre, and what do you think sets it apart? So your love of some of the books that were dystopian kind of pushed you in that direction. Was there any other, like, the aspect of what you could do creatively in that world?
I think dystopian is interesting because you can explore a really bad future in a safe environment as the author. But you can explore politically complex things in a very bad world and make statements about things through like the characters and what they end up doing or not doing in your world. And it was funny because fun I think it's funny, but when the pandemic was happening and I had just released The Diseased Ones, I was like, my gosh, my title. And we have a virus that's like all across the world. Anyway, I kind of used that a little bit in my like joke marketing. Stuck inside, read about, the diseased ones. It's terrible. Yeah, that's funny. Wow, that was like a memory that just popped up.
I mean, it was probably a lot of people probably picked up books during that time frame, to be honest. So how do you think that dystopian fiction reflects or influences our views on the real world challenges like technology, society, and the environment? Do you think it could have an impact?
It's like a pretty loaded question.
It is kind of. We just finished rewatching V for Vendetta. I don't know if you've watched that movie.
I saw it again recently.
Yeah, it definitely is an example of what kind of question that one could be. What type of impact you think that the dystopian world can have?
I think that, what I like about being an author, but also being a reader, is the reading is subjective. You recognize that not everybody's going to like the story that you tell. But for the people who do like the story that you tell, everyone's reading experience of it is different, and what they take away from it is different, and what impacted them most, or what they gleaned from the message or the themes or the characters. It's been so fun talking to readers and just seeing what part of Hollis's story impacted them most. And, places where sometimes my intent was to accomplish this, and then from reader feedback, yes, I did accomplish this. And sometimes it'll be like, oh, well, my intent was this, but readers are taking it and interpreting it this way. I don't know if you've heard the phrase death of the author, but it's basically where author intends X, readers don't take it as X, they take it as Y. Therefore, death of the author's intention here. So I think particularly with the diseased ones, and I wrote The Diseased Ones when I was younger and less experienced, and I would say I'm a better writer and storyteller now, writing my 6th book, than I was writing The Diseased Ones and publishing that as my first full book. But I also love that because it reflects us as a character, and now she's 16, she's young, she's naive, she's brainwashed, like he has to grow a lot. Even my writing style is more simplistic in The Diseased Ones, but we see the writing style and her character grow and get bigger and more complex through the series. That's something that I've noticed just from talking to readers, and they're interpreting my work. And most people who read The Diseased Ones, whether they love it or hate it, a lot of people hate Hollis. They're like, loved the book. It was a 5-star book for me. Man, I wanted to reach into the pages and strangle Hollis. I didn't realize that reader disdain for her would be so strong with that book, but then removed further and further from the story and what I intended. That's like kind of the point. And I was like, wow, I learned something from my readers that I didn't know. I think I didn't fully recognize when I was writing her story, if that makes sense.
No, it absolutely makes sense. I love that. That's fantastic. So, what role does hope play in the dystopian fiction, particularly in your narrative?
I think a big hope, especially as we move toward the end of the series, is that we can see the humanity in people that like are deemed as inhuman, and that we can big hope for like peace and like getting along and realizing that like everyone's just trying to like live and exist, and like these groups of people are afraid of each other for reasons and messages that are not true about the other group, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which I feel like, I don't know, we live in a very politically divided world right now. It's very intense all the time. All the
Yeah.
time.
A lot of parallels, I would say, if you look for them.
Yeah, exactly. So just there's a I'm wondering if I can find this line in the fourth book, because I feel like it's very like thematic to this question right here. Okay. His rhetoric has been edging dangerously close to heralding people with powers as the only good and noble race, the pure ones. The phrase tastes like poison on my tongue. I'm not a pure one, and I'm not a diseased one either. I'm just a human being caught up in the aftermath of a bloody and dark history that happened because of prejudice, hate, and fear.
Holy cow.
There it is. That's one of her inner monologues
Realizations.
in the first third of the fourth book, which is the finale. That's the empowered ones. Anyway, just thought of that as we were talking.
Oh, no, that's fantastic. So, what would you say is one of the most surprising or rewarding moments in your author career so far? Like a fan favorite moment, something that happened with one of your fans or anything like that.
I have a super fan. Her name is Sophia. She's the sweetest thing ever. Just seeing her, the excitement for my series the whole time it was going, and it took me like 7 years to write and publish all 4 books. It was a significant time period. But what was cool is I got to, as I was finishing up the 4th book and I was sending it out to some early readers and some authors to give praise quotes for it, I was like, do you want to read an early copy of the empowered ones and give a praise quote, and I'll put your quote on the hardcover sleeve of the book? And she was like, so hers is a fan quote that's on the hardback version of the empowered ones. And I just love that I got to do that for her and just have her be a part of the series. She bought the hardback, of course, because that quote was on the hardback. But like, it was just so fun having her interact with the series that way after being such a dedicated fan for that many years and loving my story and loving Hollis. And this girl's probably read the diseased ones more times than I have, and that's really saying something, because I've read my own books a lot of times through the years. And she sent me an annotated version of the diseased ones for me to sign, and I got to sit and kind of page through her little margin notes on things, and I was like, that's such a good point. I didn't think of that. Like,
that's
her
so
analyzing
fun.
my own book. It was just so fun to read. Yeah, I loved that.
That's awesome. That would feel so good, I think. Okay, how do you balance being an indie author while connecting with readers and growing your community?
It's a lot of social media time, and sometimes I feel really burnt out by it, but it's how I sell books. I'm definitely I pitch on TikTok a lot. And I mean, TikTok's great because it'll send your videos out to people who don't follow you more often than people who do follow you. Whereas I think Instagram is great for connecting with people you already know, because the Instagram algorithm will typically push content to people who already follow you and interact with your stuff. So I've done a lot of community building and getting to know people on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And more marketing on TikTok. And I have gotten to know some people on TikTok, just I think not as well as I've gotten to know people on Instagram. And yeah, it's just a lot of social media stuff. Sometimes I'll be like really aggressive about it and I'll have energy for it. And then other times I'm like, I have no content ideas anymore. I've been doing this for 4 years. Like, what else do I talk about? But I will post. Writing updates are always easy. Oh, I hit this many words in my manuscript, or I got this many words in a writing sprint today. And maybe I'll share a writing snippet or, some collage of character inspiration things from Pinterest, or it kind of just ebbs and flows into what I'm feeling
Right,
at the time.
exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. So if you had to give one piece of advice to an aspiring author, particularly in the dystopian genre, what do you suppose it would be?
I would say that if you are serious about getting published one day as a writer, then what you need to do is a lot of learning, and you need to be okay with it taking a long time. I would absolutely recommend against rushing a first publication because you just feel like, oh, I just want to get my first book published. A lot of indie authors I know have gone back to their earlier works and either taken them down or refurbished them because they look back and they say, I don't think I was ready to publish that story, but I did anyway. And I've learned so much more and I know so much more and I can tell a better story and I'm a better writer. If possible, go to a writing conference, learn from people who have been doing this for a long time, take story arc workshops, take editing workshops, take pitching workshop. I didn't know how to tell people about my books when I started. They're like, oh, you're writing a book. What's it about? And I'm like, I don't know what it's about. What do you mean what it's about? I'm very comfortable pitching now. I pitch my stuff all the time. In-person book events, I have my pitches down to a science. They're quick, they're snappy, they have a hook. That was a skill I had to develop that did not just happen overnight. My ability to write and my ability to edit and my ability to identify what isn't working in my own work. Finding my people, like finding an editor that I like working with, finding beta readers, finding cover artists, people to format my book. I have not personally learned how to format. It's something I would like to do. This has all taken a lot of years of connecting and talking with people and learning. So if you're serious about getting published, whether that's traditional publishing or indie publishing, you should be learning. You should be a student and connect yourself with other writers and read in the genre that you want to write in. If you are doing, fantasy romance and that's what you want to be as a writer in that genre, you should be reading fantasy romance and you should be identifying what you like in stories, what does and doesn't work for you as a reader. I say, write the story you want to read. That's true. You should be excited about your own work and what you're writing and identifying in other people's books. That was a really good book for me as a reader. What did I like about that book? What was compelling about that book? What made me not want to put it down? Incorporating that into your own work and just constantly being a student because you never arrive. I've not arrived just because I've published 5 books. I will continue to learn and improve things about my own storytelling and craft, just continually being in the mind of a student and being proud of what you have done, but pushing yourself to get even better and better with each work that you continue to do.
Wow, that's some good advice. I love that. It's very good advice. So are there any non-dystopian genres that you would love to try your hand at?
Yeah, actually, in fact, I'll pull up this. This is the first book in my next series. It's called Keyholder. This is
the one that got my attention when I found you.
This is an enemies to lovers bounty hunter romantasy, and my quick pitch for this book is it's about a young woman who becomes bloodbound to a key that holds the power to save the world, and so all of the kingdoms hunt her for this power. She's captured by a bounty hunter in the name of one of the kings, and she has to discover what her role as the key holder is to save all of the kingdoms. This is also an illustrated book. So pretty. It's so pretty, guys. But yeah, I'm a cross-genre author, started with dystopian, and now I'm in the fantasy romance area, and this will be a duology, so just 2 books when it's done, and I'm working on the sequel right now, which is going to be rather fat. It's going to be fatter than the Empowered ones. Wrathwielder, book 2 of this, will be my biggest book when I end up finishing that manuscript.
Wicked. So is it just an illusion, or is that like a holographic cover? It kind of, from here, it looks kind of holographic. Okay.
This is a special edition Kickstarter version. This is just a matte sleeve, but underneath this, I did a foil hard case laminate design for this. It's literally stunning.
Yeah,
right?
that is gorgeous.
Anyway, so
There's
this
a lot of people
was
that are going to drool over that.
the prettiest book I've ever made, guys. It's so
Oh,
pretty. But yeah, I'm in the fantasy. I write fantasy now,
that's
and
awesome.
the world building is very different in fantasy than dystopian. This is something
Yeah.
I've had to do a lot more work on with Keyholder than I had to do with the Hollis Timewire series.
It looks incredible.
Thank you.
So, for those who are meeting you in your work for the first time, how can they best connect with you?
So I am on Instagram and TikTok under the same handle, DJ Harrington Writer, and I'm very active on both platforms. I also have a website, DJ Harrington Books, that I have all my books up on. I have the first chapter of The Diseased Ones available to read for free on my website, and also the first chapter of Keyholder available to read for free.
Oh, cool.
I sell my books on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And I sell private too. If you send me a DM and you're like, hey, what do you have? And then I could like sign it and give you swag and stuff like that. So yeah, I sell direct too, just when people reach out, and yeah, it's fun.
That's awesome. Plus, we're also going to carry it on our website as well. Thank you so much for sitting down with us tonight and getting an opportunity to dive into both types of series, only a little briefly on the fantasy side, but I find it so exciting that you're not done writing and that this is just the beginning for you.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so fun.
I think that I'm going to have to grab. Can people purchase that gorgeous book? Or is that just, you said it was a Kickstarter?
Okay, so it's a Kickstarter special edition, and I do have some extra left over from my Kickstarter that I have been like bringing to book events and selling privately. So I do have some copies left. They will run out. But if
I was going to say, you might not by the end of this.
Like DM me asking about it, like I'll give you information about like cost and shipping and stuff like that. But they are limited and will run out. You're like, actually, maybe me.
I kind of want it. I must admit, I think that's fun. I think it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's okay. And this is like color illustrations too. So the retail version of Keyholder only has black and white illustrations because it costs me money to print in color. Like the premium color with like just the sleeve and that like hard case laminate design is just such gorgeous. A shiny book.
Awesome. All right. I am so happy to have had the opportunity to sit down and talk with you. And I can't wait to see what you create with the Keyholder series. And I am definitely looking at that first series. I know that my daughter would love it. You had her the moment you were talking about Heroes, because she spent the last time she was here with us, she was watching that the whole time she was here. She's in her 20s now, but she would love that series. So, and I mean, obviously I'm going to read it before I give it to her, because otherwise I'll never see it again.
And I would say like my target audience for the Hollis Timewire series is like age 13 to 18, but anyone who loves the dystopian genre just in general. Like I still read young adult books as an adult. I love young adult books. So it's for fans of dystopian. And then I've got like my main target age audience, you know?
Yeah. So what's the Keyholder target audience?
Keyholder, I recommend for 18 plus. I would say a mature 16-year-old would probably be fine reading it. Like the romance is no spice. Like it's not open door or anything like that. And language use is pretty mild. But in Keyholder, I do deal with like some pretty more serious themes in certain aspects than I do with the Hollis Timewire series. So Keyholder is new adult. My main character is 22 years old. Hollis Timewire series is young adult, and my main character is 16.
Okay. Those are good metrics for it, I guess. Awesome. Once again, Danielle, thank you so much. And I really appreciate having this time to talk.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks.